Hi, and welcome. I'm Arizona lawyer Julia Labenz. This is Win Without Law School. Today, we are going to talk about how to create a case strategy for child support in the context of establishing child custody, legal decision-making, parenting time, child support. We're going to look at how to create a case strategy for child support. So in today's video, we're going to look at 5 different things. Number 1, why and how to create a child support case strategy. I'm going to go over a bunch of different points in Arizona's child support guidelines. We're going to go through the child support calculator, and we're going to also talk about how to create a child support worksheet, a child support order, and an income withholding order. So first, let's talk about why to create a child support case strategy. It helps you get clear about your desired outcome. Instead of just throwing a number out there and saying you want that for child support, you're going to be able to have an actual number based on the calculator. And then if your opposing party or the judge asks you what you're asking for child support, you'll have a proposed amount and it'll be based on Arizona law. Also, you'll be able to see if what you have in mind for child support, if that's realistic, and how to move forward. And overall, to create a child support case strategy, you're looking to figure out the amount of child support you're asking the court to order. Before we jump in to the calculator and the different parts of it, I want to talk about some premises of Arizona's 2022 child support guidelines, because I think that these will help to clear up a lot of common confusion when it comes to child support. So number 1, these guidelines apply to all children for whom there's a legal obligation to support. The support of other persons, such as stepchildren, is considered voluntary and does not impact the child support determined under the guidelines. Child support obligation has priority over all other financial obligations. Non-support financial obligations generally do not affect the child support obligation except as provided in these guidelines. The fact that a parent receives child support does not mean that he or she may not also be entitled to spousal maintenance. In some circumstances, a parent who has more parenting time than the other parent may be ordered to pay child support. The obligation to pay and the right to receive child support is separate from any rights or responsibilities relating to legal decision-making and parenting time. The parent receiving child support is presumed to spend his or her share directly on the child. There's no accounting for how they spend the money. And once the court orders child support, the child support must be paid in money. Gifts of clothing or other things in lieu of money are not to be offset against the child support order unless the court orders otherwise. Okay, so we're going to jump into the child support guidelines and talk about how to determine income, how to determine adjustments, and how to deviate. But before we jump into that, I'm going to stop this share and I'm going to change to the calculator. Okay, this is Arizona's current child support calculator. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And up here, you fill in some basic information about the case, the parties, the children that are the petitioner and the respondent have in common. And then that will auto-populate down here and fill this in. And then you're going to select what type of parenting plan. Are the kids mostly with parent A? Are the kids mostly with parent B? Or is there an equal parenting plan? And then income, a parent's income on a monthly, annually, or hourly basis, and whether or not that income's been attributed. If either parent is paying or receiving spousal maintenance, if either parent has children from other relationships that they are or are not paying child support for. We come down here. If either parent is paying medical, dental, and vision insurance for the children at issue in this support order, they can get credit for that amount. Same thing for monthly childcare costs, extra education expenses, as well as extraordinary, which are gifted or special needs child expenses. I'm going to go into more detail about these adjustments when we go back to the slides. And then down here is the parenting time adjustment. If you have a non-50-50 parenting plan, the parent with less parenting time gets credit for their total number of parenting time days. When you fill in all of that information in your case, that's going to give you a final child support number. If you keep scrolling down, you can add in additional information about deviating. We're going to talk about that. If there's an arrearage judgment, if there's past support owed, if there's paternity expenses owed. And then that will come up with a total amount to be paid per month when it starts. There's also going to be a division, a percentage division between the parents to share uninsured medical costs for the children, to share transportation expenses if that's involved, to exercise parenting time. And then it's also going to give you information about how the child tax credits are divided between the parents. So all of this is in the worksheet tab in the calculation or in this spreadsheet. But then there's also this spot for a child support order, paternity judgment and order, and an income withholding order. And we'll talk about those as well. So I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to go back to the slides. Okay, so we're back on the slides and let's talk about how to determine gross income for the parents. We saw on the calculator where you input income on an hourly, monthly, or annual basis. So for an hourly rate, you can look at a pay stub, get an hourly rate. Arizona's current minimum wage is $13.85 per hour. That's as of 2023. Using a gross monthly income is good if you're annualizing income, meaning if somebody only works for part of the year, you can annualize that income. We'll give an example of that in a minute. You can also use an annual gross income. Tax returns show annual gross income, but it's not defined the same necessarily. So we've got more information here. This information here, this is all from Arizona's 2022 child support guidelines. So child support income does not have the same meaning as gross income or adjusted gross income for tax purposes. The effect of taxes has been considered. So you may think, oh, it's not fair to use gross income, but the calculation is actually taking into consideration how taxes would apply. So that is factored into the calculator. Child support income includes income from any source before any deductions or withholdings. So salaries, wages, commissions, bonuses, dividends. I mean, you can see there's a laundry list here, and that's all considered income. If you have seasonal or fluctuating income within a year, that can be annualized to determine the average monthly income. So how would you annualize seasonal income? Here's an example. Sean is a teacher and is paid only 9 months a year. Sean is paid $7,000 a month from September through May and is not paid for the months of June, July, and August. The earnings must be annualized as follows. Multiply the monthly income by the number of months the parent is paid to get the annual earnings, and then divide that by 12 to get the average monthly child support income. You can do this with expenses as well. If you have expenses that don't last throughout the year, you get the total amount, divide by 12, and then that would give you a monthly amount. What's included in gross income? The court has discretion to consider non-continuing or non-recurring income. And the court also has discretion to average fluctuating income over periods exceeding a year. So the court can decide whether or not to use this non-continuing, non-recurring, or fluctuating income. And then if one parent has income from self-employment, from rental properties, royalties, a business, then you're going to look at gross income minus ordinary and necessary expenses, including 1/2 of the self-employment tax actually paid. So calculating gross income for somebody who has their own business or gets rental income can be a little more difficult. You know, you're not necessarily going to be able to just look at a pay stub and get your information, but instead may have to engage in this calculation of gross receipts minus ordinary and necessary expenses. Expense reimbursements or benefits a parent receives in the course of employment, self-employment, or operating a business are included as income. So for example, if your employer or you're self-employed and your business pays for your cell phone, that can be deemed income to you as part of child support income. And then same thing for continuing or recurring military entitlements. Those can be deemed income for child support purposes. What's not included in gross income? Sums received as child support, welfare benefits, sums a parent receives by or for the benefit of a minor child, including adoption subsidies, supplemental Social Security income, and subsidies from the disability of a child. Those are not income. The court does not consider how marital property is distributed in determining income for child support purposes. And if a person does not have a legal duty to support a child, that person's income is not included. So income of a parent's new spouse or a step-parent, that's not included in a calculation. When is overtime included in gross income? Generally, the court doesn't include it, but it could be included if there's a history of doing that. So the court may consider income actually earned if it is greater than would have been earned by full-time employment, if that income was historically earned and is anticipated to continue. The court generally does not attribute additional income to a parent if it would require an extraordinary work regimen. So you really have to look at the facts regarding overtime in your case and see if it would be appropriate, to include it, but it won't be included if it requires an extraordinary work regimen, it's not regular, or maybe the parent has changed their mind and doesn't want to work overtime going forward in order to spend more time with their kids, and the court will allow for that. What if you or your co-parent is unemployed or underemployed? In that event, the court can do what's called attributing income. So attributing income is when you use income, let me just read from here. Attributed child support income is not income actually earned or received, but instead is an assigned income based on a court finding regarding the amount that should be used to calculate child support. So the court presumes that a parent is capable of full-time employment at least minimum wage, either at the federal or state level, whichever is higher. When the court attributes minimum wage, it considers full-time employment to be 40 hours per week. The court could consider fewer hours to be full-time if the person is earning more than minimum wage, but the bottom line is that if a parent is unemployed or underemployed, the court can attribute the amount that they could be earning. And if the court attributes income, then that should be noted in the court papers. When is child support income attributed, even if it's not being actually earned? Here's the factors the court considers. Basically, their earning history, criminal record, any barriers to employment, and then also what's going on with the job market, what kind of jobs are available. Also, when a parent is unemployed or underemployed, whether voluntary or involuntarily, the court must consider the reasons. In determining whether to attribute income, the court considers the child's best interests and all other relevant factors, including, if voluntary, whether it is reasonable for the parent to find replacement income, if voluntary with reasonable cause, whether that parent's decision and its benefits outweigh the effect that the reduced income has on the child, if voluntary and without good cause, whether income attribution is appropriate, and if the parent has the ability to find suitable work in the marketplace at a greater income based on the parent's current education level, training and experience, and physical capability. Now, income is never attributed if the parent is incarcerated, or if the parent is physically or mentally disabled, the parent is engaged in reasonable career or occupational training, or there's unusual emotional or physical needs of a child that requires the parent's presence in the home, and that would be a child in common to the parents. or the parent is a caretaker of a young child common to the parties and the cost of childcare is prohibitive. So this is when income would not be attributed or in these 4 circumstances, or actually 5, including incarceration. All right, let's talk about adjustments. So we talked about how to determine income, but what payments can you get credit for? You can get credit for paying spousal maintenance. Also, if a spouse or a co-parent is receiving spousal maintenance, they would get credit for that receipt as an additional amount of income. Support of children of other relationships, you can get credit for that. Paying medical insurance for the children at issue in the case, you can get credit for that. Paying childcare expenses for the kids at issue in the case, education expenses, extraordinary expenses, again, all for children at issue in the case. And then there can also be a parenting time credit. And you can annualize non-monthly expenses to get a monthly amount. Let's talk about medical insurance. The court order for child support is going to assign one parent the responsibility for getting medical insurance for the child. And in giving a credit to that parent in the child support worksheet for the amount they pay, they only get credit for the amount that covers the child. So if they have a family plan that covers the whole family, they need to figure out the amount just for the child. And they could prorate the total cost by the number of people covered. Unless otherwise agreed, if medical insurance is of comparable benefits and cost is available to both parents, the order assigns responsibility to the parent who has the greater amount of parenting time. If the parents share essentially equal parenting time, the order assigns responsibility after considering all relevant factors. If a parent is assigned the obligation to provide medical insurance, that responsibility may be fulfilled by family coverage provided by a step-parent or domestic partner, and they'd still get credit for that in the calculator. A parent is not obligated to provide dental and vision insurance, but if they do, they get credit for that. And the court may decline a credit if the parent is providing coverage in a geographic location other than where the child resides. So the coverage needs to apply to the geographic region where the child resides in order to get credit. Let's talk about childcare expenses. The amount paid for childcare so a parent can work or seek employment can be added to the basic child support obligation. And if you're going to do that, then the childcare expenses have to be paid to someone who's not being claimed as your dependent per the IRS rules. The childcare adjustment must be appropriate to the parent's financial abilities, and childcare expenses are annualized if they're not year-round. How about education expenses? Any reasonable and necessary education expenses for attending private or special schools, or necessary expenses to meet the particular educational needs of a child, if such expenses are incurred by agreement of both parents or ordered by the court. So if one parent unilaterally wants to do private school and is going to pay for it, they can do that, but they want to get credit in the calculator. If both parents agree on the private school, then there can be a credit. And those education expenses, if they aren't incurred year-round, those would be annualized. How about extraordinary expenses? The guidelines are designed to fit the needs of most children. The basic child support obligation may be adjusted to provide for costs incurred for a gifted or special needs child. If benefits are paid to a parent to assist in meeting a child's needs, such as those described in the guidelines, adjustment for the cost may not be appropriate. So if, for example, a parent is getting some subsidies from the state to pay for special gifted or special needs children, then they're not going to get a credit for that. Also, you can annualize extraordinary childcare expenses if you don't incur them every month. Parenting time. So if you have a non-50-50 parenting plan, then the parent with less parenting time can get a parenting time adjustment credit. Even if the parents share essentially equal parenting time, a parent may still owe child support to the other parent if one parent's adjusted child support income is higher than the others, or the expenses for the children are not equally shared. So add up the total parenting time days for the parent with less parenting time to determine the credit. Parenting time is calculated based on the segments of time that are assigned to each parent. The parenting time for either parent begins at the time of the exchange, and unless otherwise provided in the court order, if the exchange occurs at school or with a caregiver, the receiving parent's time commences at the end of the day. Conversely, the other parent's segment ends at the same time. So here's an example. If one parent, so they do the exchange at school. School starts at 8:30 a.m. and it ends at 3. So one parent, Riley, he's entitled to, he or she, they use these names that aren't clear of the gender, but Riley is entitled to parenting time beginning at the end of the school day on Monday through drop off at school on Wednesday morning, which is 8:30 a.m. Blair's parenting time begins at the end of the school day on Wednesday, which is 3 p.m. In determining Riley's parenting time segment, Riley is deemed to have the child from 3 p.m. Monday until 3 p.m. Wednesday, which would be 2 parenting days. So the time at school is counted in there. To adjust for the cost of parenting time, first determine the total annual amount of parenting time indicated in the court order, parenting plan, by the parent's expectation or by historical practice. And then here's some guides for calculating. Count 1 day for each 24-hour block of time. If there's less than 24 hours, then if it's 12 hours or more, that's 1 day. If it's 6 to 11 hours, that's a half day. 3 to 5 hours is a quarter of a day, and less than 3 hours may count as a quarter of a day if during those hours the parent with less parenting time pays for routine expenses of the child, such as meals. So here's some examples. Bailey and Jules have 1 child. Bailey has less parenting time. In alternating weeks, Bailey receives the child at 8 p.m. on Thursday and returns the child to Jules at 7 a.m. Monday. 8 p.m. Thursday to 8 p.m. Sunday is 3 days. 8 p.m. Sunday to 8 a.m. Monday is 11 hours, which equals a half day. So total parenting time day is 3.5 days for that alternating week. Here's another example. Alex and Kendall have 1 child. Alex has less parenting time than Kendall. Alex picks the child up at 3 p.m. Friday and returns the child to Kendall at 8 a.m. on Monday. 3 p.m. Friday to 3 p.m. Sunday is 2 days. 3 p.m. Sunday to 8 a.m. Monday is 17 hours, which is a day. So that's 3 days. Final example. Angel and Harper have 1 child. Angel has less parenting time. Angel picks up the child at noon on Saturday and returns the child to Harper at 9 p.m. on Sunday. Noon Saturday to noon Sunday is 1 day. Noon Sunday to 9 p.m. Sunday is 9 hours, which equals a half day. Total parenting time for Angel is 1.5 days for that week. All right, deviations. So a deviation occurs when a court orders child support in an amount different from the amount determined under the guidelines. So you run your child support worksheet, you get a number, and you don't want to use that number. You want to use something different. That's when you can deviate up or down from the guideline amount. The court must deviate if it finds all of the following criteria are met. Applying the guidelines would be inappropriate or unjust. The court has considered the child's best interests. The court makes written findings regarding that the guidelines are inappropriate or unjust and the child's best interests and puts those into the court papers. The court shows that what the order would have been without the deviation, and the court shows what the order is after deviating. Additionally, the court may deviate from the guidelines based on the parties' agreement if it finds all of the following. The agreement is in writing or stated on the record. All parties have entered into the agreement with knowledge of the amount of child support prior to the deviation. The parties enter the agreement free of duress and coercion. The court complies with the requirements we just went over on the last slide. And then circumstances that may warrant a deviation include, this is not an extensive list, but here's some ideas of when a deviation could be merited. There's a significant disparity of income between the parents, and each parent has significant parenting time. The combined income of the parents exceeds $30,000 a month, and there's a significant disparity in income between the parents. One parent is paying a disproportionate share of the child's expenses, and there is significant parenting time for each parent, the parenting plan will require a parent to incur significant travel expenses related to parenting time, and the cost thereof in combination with child support may impede the parent's ability to exercise parenting time. The payment of child support would compromise the parent's ability to receive and afford out-of-pocket necessary and extraordinary health or mental health services, or unusual emotional or physical needs of a natural or adopted child not common to the parties, that if that child requires that parent's presence in the home. So these are circumstances that may warrant a deviation. And then just keep in mind, it is not a deviation to round off the monthly child support amount for ease of accounting. So if you're at $145 per month and you want to round up to $150 for ease, you can do that. Also, it's not a deviation to compromise on any individual figure in the guidelines calculation, such as parenting time adjustment. You can round or compromise on those figures within the calculator, and that's not a deviation. It's not a deviation to reduce the child support order based on the self-support reserve test. It's not a deviation to order zero child support if the monthly child support amount would be less than the $8 monthly support clearinghouse fee. All right, so we've got Arizona's child support calculator. We're going to pull that up again. Remember, in order to calculate child support, you need each parent's gross income on an hourly, monthly, or annual basis, and then all of the adjustments for spousal maintenance, if that applies, for support of other children not in common to the parents, if that applies, amount paid for health insurance for the children in common, childcare expenses, education expenses, extraordinary expenses for the children in common, and then the parenting time adjustment if you don't have an essentially equal parenting plan. So we're going to look at that in a second. In addition, we're going to look at the child support worksheet order and income withholding order. So let me pull the worksheet back up. Okay, so I'm going to move up here back to the top. Okay, if you have a case number, you're going to enter that here. For your county, you'll see there's a drop-down menu and you can pick any county that you're in. If you have a 4D case, meaning you or your co-parent are receiving welfare benefits, you would check this box. Here you'll put in the name of the petitioner. I'll use Jane Doe, respondent, John Doe. Each child, Max Doe, let's give him a date of birth of June 15th, 2012. And then we'll do Olivia, and we'll give her a date of birth of April 19, 2015. Okay, so we've got two kids. If you want to use a different date to start the calculation, you can put that in here. You can also use an alternate date if you're going to do some past calculations. So once you have that information entered, scroll down, you'll see we've got today's date. We've got the party names I just listed. If I'd put a case number in, that would go in there. And then we've got the information about the two children. Now, the first selection to make is your type of parenting plan. We're going to start with an equal plan. And then the next thing is to enter your income. So we'll do an hourly rate. Parent A, we'll put at minimum wage. And we're going to attribute that to her. And then for parent B, we'll do $25 an hour. If spousal maintenance is being paid or received by either parent, you would put that amount in here. So if it's being paid, you're going to put it in a parenthesis. If it's being received, you'll put no parentheses. So that means a negative number, meaning it's being paid. And then this is being received. So that's no parentheses. Court-ordered child support of other relationships actually paid. So if you are paying spousal maintenance for a child not in common between you and the parents listed and the other parent listed, then you would put that amount. Also, you may enter other children that either parent has. Now, this is optional, but if parent A has one child from another relationship, they can get credit there. If parent B has two children from other relationships, they could get credit there. I'm going to take those out for now. We come down. Here is the adjustments. Okay, so the adjustment for the insurance. If you're paying the insurance here, let's say parent B is paying and they're paying $150 a month. Monthly child care costs, whoever's paying that would go in here. Any extra education expenses, whoever's paying gets that credit. Same thing with the extraordinary child expenses. Now, since we did an equal parenting plan, we don't need to put in any parenting time because they have equal parenting plan. Now, using these numbers, parent B would have a child support obligation of $164 a month. We come down here, we see the current amount. If you wanted to deviate from that amount, if you wanted to make it higher or lower, that's where you could do that here. Also, if you wanted to round without deviation, you wanted to take it up to 165 instead of the 164, that's where you would do that. If you already had an arrears judgment and you wanted to affirm that, you could put that in here. If you are looking for a past support judgment, you can put that in here. If there's paternity expenses that need to be paid, those can go in here. And you'll get a final amount and the starting date. And then also based on the parties' incomes, you'll get these percentages about how to divide uncovered medical expenses and transportation expenses for exercising parenting time, if those apply in your case. And then also the division of the child tax credits is listed down here. And so what you'll find is everything that's in this worksheet is automatically populated into this child support order. It shows the kids, their dates of birth, the amount of child support. If you had any arrears or past support, those would be entered here. You've got the amount to be paid, when it starts, the clearinghouse fee, the clearinghouse information, the division of uninsured costs for medical insurance and for travel costs, the division of the tax deductions, and then the judge signs here. Also, we've got here the income withholding order. For the parent that needs to pay child support, an income withholding order can go into place. It's an order to their employer, telling their employer to deduct the child support amount and to pay it to the clearinghouse, and then the clearinghouse will pay it to their co-parent. So you can see here, all the different forms you need are right here on the bottom, and you can create a PDF of each document. So here's a PDF of the worksheet, but I could remove that and instead do the child support order and make that into a PDF. You have a bunch of options here. Okay, so let me stop the share. Let's go back to the slideshow and just finish it up. So we just went through the child support worksheet. So let's just do a quick summary and wrap up today's video. So in calculating child support, you'll need to determine each parent's gross income, and you have the option of attributing income if you qualify. In other words, if it's fair and equitable in the circumstances. We went through all the different criteria related to attributing income. You'll want to account for adjustments, for example, for spousal maintenance, if that's at issue in your case, child support for other children, medical insurance, childcare expenses, education expenses, extraordinary expenses, and parenting time. You can get adjustments for all of those in the calculator. You can consider whether or not you want to request it to deviate from the child support amount by increasing it or decreasing it. You can create your child support worksheet, create your child support order, review the child tax exemptions, look at the percentages for dividing the unpaid or uncovered medical expenses. And then you can also create an income withholding order, all within that Excel spreadsheet. All right, if you have any questions, please bring that to the Q&A sessions. And you will find in the members area the child support calculator, the Excel spreadsheet, so you can access that there and start playing around with it. Thank you so much for joining me today.